Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wild Winter Women YouTube channel. I'm Leah, and we're covering the 2026 Iditarod Trail Invitational, which is a human-powered race that's taking place right now. And there's a team of women in the Wild Winter Women group who have been following the race very closely and providing coverage because we love the stories and the people from the trail. So today is Friday, March 6th, and I'm joined by Jessica Roschlan. And today we have the honor of talking again with Tracie Curry. She's an athlete who was out last week in this year's 350-mile ITI race on skis. And we interviewed Tracie last year after she broke the women's ski record for the 350-mile race in 5 days, 22 hours, and 8 minutes. So, Tracie, welcome back and congratulations on your race in a super challenging year.
Oh, thanks.
So I'm wondering if we could start with your background skiing, kind of going way back. Like, when did you start skiing? If you could tell us about your past skiing experience and how that led to you being involved with the ITI.
Yeah, so I started skiing later in life. I didn't pick it up till like my early 30s well, actually late 20s. When I just moved to Alaska. I moved to Fairbanks for school to do my PhD at UAF, and have always been a runner, and but then quickly found out that I am not a fan of winter running, and especially like a lot of the great trails, especially around the university campus, turn into ski trails in the wintertime and you can't run on them. And so it's like, well, I guess I better pick up skiing. And it turns like I really enjoy it, and like it for the versatility and for the access to places that it allows you to get. Yeah.
Cool. So living in Fairbanks, you spend a lot of time skiing. Do you participate in other ski races, like shorter races, or is most of your skiing long distance?
It's all long distance. And I think having picked it up later in life, I definitely do not have the level of technique that a lot of the people that have been doing it their whole lives do have. Like if I did try early on to do some of like the town races up at Birch Hill, and I am no match for those kids. They're just so fast, and I learned a lot. Like I used to when I first started trying to learn how to ski, I did volunteer for a lot of those races just to like see the racing and the technique and like how people are racing like close together and in large packs and starting out together in mass starts and things like that. Um, but yeah, so all of it is more long distance, and I really like frankly enjoy that better because it also like part of skiing is just getting access to being outside and seeing, new places.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I've done like the White Mountains 100 a few times, and the Tanana River Challenge, Tanana River to Ridge. Those are all the Endurance North races in Fairbanks, Alaska. We can talk about Endurance North. It's a nonprofit that I'm a part of here. Maybe we can talk about it later. And so that's like 100 mile, 50 mile, 50 mile. And then there's the Susitna 100. And I think uh, in the beginning, I was pretty slow. It takes a while it's very technique oriented skiing, especially to be efficient. And so like I used to like come in past the cutoff times for some races, including Tina River to Ridge a few times. And so I think my times didn't really count in those races. But you stick at something, you get better at it. And like I ski every day in the winter time. I'm not one of those people who will bike some days and run other day. I do run once a day just to like keep a baseline for running come summertime again. But yeah, come like winter time, I'm like 100% like cross country ski time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one thing, I've seen on social media is that you spend time like on fun, like weekend adventures, like on skis. Can you tell us about those, like cabin trips and stuff? Basically, I think that like the skiing that can happen in Fairbanks is so unique and so cool. Like I live in northern Minnesota and I wish that we had places like that to ski and like cool ski trips to go on. So I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. You're right. And I think like that's part of the reason why I decided to stay in Fairbanks after I finished my degree, and like call this place my home, because there are opportunities like the White Mountains cabin trips and in other recreation areas outside of town. There's like just like really good trail networks around, and you can make weekends out of ski trips going to cabins or camping or bivvying or what have you. But yeah, pretty much every weekend, we make it a point to, it's kind of like a fallback default. Like if we're not being creative, then we're like doing some sort of circuit in the White Mountains, you know?
Yeah.
And that's great to be able to say like that's your fallback, because like that is really great training in general. And so like, you can tie together cabins of distances like 20 miles between, 50 miles between, and do 100-mile weekends if you wanted to. Just a matter of like booking the cabins, because there is like high demand for them. So you really have to be on the ball about booking them. And I'm lucky that I have friends that that do that and want our company. So yeah.
That is so cool. Great. Thank you. So coming to this year's race, I was wondering if you could walk us through the ITI. If you could tell us like how it went kind of like day by day and talk about the checkpoints. And I do have a map that I could put on the screen if that would be helpful to kind of show the
Mhm.
route.
Yeah. Yeah, I could do that. And I'll even start by just like talking about like my strategy this year compared to like last year. Like I was approaching the race this year, like knowing some of the mistakes that I made last year and trying to kind of like learn from like having knowledge of, the particular sections and things like that. And uh, so I guess like based on the gear that I brought, and like I'm breaking the race up into sections. Like there's the start to basically the river, and then I break it up from like the river, Yentna to Skwentna, just because like those are for, I think for a skier, like you kind of are anticipating what kind of snow you're going to have, and the kind of skiing that you're going to be able to do. And I imagine that I'd be able to be pretty fast in the start and on the river, just based on last year. Last year at the start there was zero snow. It was just hiking pretty much up until Big Lake. But this year there was snow, and the terrain is conducive to fast skiing. It's not super hilly, and like there's pretty wide trails and things like that. And I think like for the most part that was the case. Especially for that first section out of the start. I think of course it's going to be faster because you're not hiking, you're like on skis and able to ski. And but then like getting to Big Lake, that was interesting because last year was all ice. And um and which made it super, super fast getting across the lake because you could just double pull. And I'm not like, I had that last year was my first time being on Big Lake, and that's kind of sketchy because there's a lot of like trucks out there. Like it turns into a highway in the winter time, and there's like a dedicated ice road. And so this year, now that there was snow, like that ice road, instead of it being the whole lake, it was like a narrow section of the lake. And I didn't quite like when I got there, I didn't quite feel comfortable about being on that road by myself with all these trucks around. And I'm like, I hope everyone's sober. Like, it's Sunday evening, it's people's weekends, and some people are driving weird. So I still like opted to be on the side, like in the snow portion, just to stay out of the traffic. And it was funny because at some point, like I'm like halfway across the lake, and then this other guy is coming behind me pulling a heavy sled. I mean, Chet Furman, he's super fast. But he had a really heavy sled, and he was just like zooming by me on the ice and like with all these cars around. And he said something to me, and I'm just kind of thinking, is that safe? But like strength in numbers, I guess. Like they're more likely to see you if there are multiple people around you. So then I got back on the ice and like carried on from there. Yeah, and then I guess so the going from Big Lake to the first checkpoint at Butterfly Lake was like pretty straightforward. I And then like last year leaving Butterfly, I had made a mistake. I wasn't quite sure like where the exit was, and it just was having to do with some tracks that I had made a misinterpretation of. But this year, like I was really like keen on not making the same mistakes that I made last year regarding like wrong turns and all that stuff. And I like pretty much achieved that but then I like made other mistakes, you know. So like I learned from the mistakes that I made, but then made different ones. So like leaving Butterfly Lake was straightforward, and then trying to get down to the Susitna River, like there's a few different ways to do that, and um,
And
like I
I don't want to
tried
interrupt, but just for
yeah.
listeners, like in this race, you have to the rules. There's a course route shown in red here. You don't have to follow that. You have to go to every single checkpoint in order, but you don't have to stay on the red line. You can choose a different route, and to get between checkpoints. And in some of these places there are other trails, and so like what Tracie's talking about, you're not just following one line in your GPS, but you have options. And as you're going along, you're kind of making decisions at different intersections, like which way you're going to go, which way you think is better, which way more people have gone. So just wanted to point that out, but I can turn the tracks off.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, like leaving like was able to find a more direct route down to the Susitna River, which was great. But yeah, I mean, so I think so like that section, like so far the race was going fine. I think like that stretch on once you get from the Susitna to the Yintna, like that is one of the hardest parts of the race for me. It was last year and it was again this year, just because like by the time a skier myself by the time I'm hitting it, it's dark. And it's already late and it's just like flat and open and straight, and it's just really tedious, that section. Um, and it was really nice to be able to like a couple of like Meg is a good friend of mine, Meg and Akuma, and she ran it this year, and then also Scott, who was on foot last year, was also around the same pace. And so like luckily like I was able to like ping pong with them a little bit throughout that section and chat a bit, because otherwise they were like, you can just be falling asleep skiing while you're there and just kind of struggling through it. I
Mm-hmm.
thought it was interesting I think the conditions on the river and for a good part of the race were really conducive to like the foot racers, just because it was so well packed and firm, and not so great for skiing, just because you're just like skiing on like like a like crust, and what's it called when it's like like it's crinkled.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a word I'm thinking of. But anyways, it's like, oh, like washboard crust, and and so like double poling wasn't super efficient, and then skiing, like you could do diagonal stride, but like it's hard to keep tracking straight, especially with all like the bike tracks and stuff. So it was really kind of a slow going skiing. A lot of people were asking me before the race, like, is this going to be faster this year now that you have snow? And I was really cautious because it's like it really depends on the quality of the snow, and it's supposed to be cold, and so snow can be really slow when it's cold.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just like being on the Yitna was long. It's just something to get through. It's not a section that I enjoy. Um, let's see. So yeah, I stopped in Yitna Station for a little bit just to like eat something and get some hot water. They were super nice in there. Um, and then like I was kind of in there like right around like waiting for the sun to come up. I wasn't planning to sleep there. And I think another part of my strategy was like the weather forecast was looming, like it was really projected to be a cold year and windy, and then that wind was supposed to start coming in. I don't like now I'm not can't be specific about the times or the dates, but I want to say like around Tuesday or something like that. But I wanted to be like through the um, Shell Hills and past Finger Lake by the time all that wind came through. Like ideally, I would have been over the pass, over Rainy Pass by the time wind came through, but that wasn't gonna happen. Just I'm not that fast, so but like I could based on time and be like through like Finger Lake by the time one came through. So I was really just trying to like take advantage of the conditions while they were good and just keep going. And so yeah, I just like continued on and went like stopped in Hooligans, that which is checkpoint two, and wanted to make it quick and spend some time there. Like was having trouble with my boots and just needed to add some like extra cushioning and just work on my feet a little bit, but then turned around and left out of there. Also, again, just trying to be quick. Um, and let's see.
And can this is on Monday now? You stopped at Hooligans?
Oh, um, perhaps. I think so. Um, yeah, it would be the next day. Like it's yes, Monday in the day. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, let me know if this is like too much detail. I can like
Hmm.
scale back, or if you want to like
Yeah.
interject questions throughout. But shall I keep going?
Yeah, I guess that's great.
Okay. Um, yeah, and then so Squintna, I last year I stopped in there and I was kind of like, why? Just because I didn't really need, and I wasn't planning to sleep there, and I carry all most of my food, so like all I need to get is hot water to like rehydrate my stuff, and and so like I didn't stop at Squintna at all. I just kind of like flew by there. And like one thing I thought about I might need is water, but then I felt like I could make that somewhere along the way since there was plenty of snow. Um, and so yeah, I still felt pretty good. And so I like flew past Squintna and continued on like Shell Lake Hills area. At some point along there, um so like I think like one thing I thought I learned last year was like don't follow other people's tracks and because they can be wrong, and that is true in most cases, but it can also be untrue in others. So like for like Shell Lake and the Shell Lake Hills, I there was there was a pretty strong wide trail that looked like a main trail. Like what is the Iditarod Trail is not the main trail in most of those areas. Or like, maybe it's not a trail, maybe it's like some sort of service road or mining road that's been put in. And I don't remember seeing that at all last year, but it was pretty prominent, like based on my vantage point this year. And so like I took it without thinking. And and is that what you're showing right
These are
there?
all yeah, all the
Uh-huh.
people who left the trail here and came down this way. And actually, I can pretty quickly, I could pull up your actual track from that. And I do have to say that you didn't go as far as a lot of people did
Mhm.
on that extra detour, but I can pull up to show folks what we're talking about here.
Oh yeah. Okay. Okay, so I see how long that could have been. But like
Mm-hmm.
also you see how in the beginning how it's basically paralleling the actual trail. Like that is what threw me off because I was navigating from my watch and I noticed that I was slightly off of the main trail but still along the same line. So there's like room for error in the GPS track, or like you said, sometimes the trail is put in a different place. Like I don't know, like sometimes there's forest fires and people put in a new trail somewhere. So like that was still like within the realm of possibilities in my mind that this could just be like a side trail or a slight detour that puts me back onto the main trail at some point. Um, yeah, and then but then it took that kink right there, and I was like, okay, this is not right. And at the same time, there were a couple of people. Uh, it was Scott and Natalie who were on foot. They were coming back the other way, and they'd gone out quite a while. And so they confirmed, they were like, this is not the right way, turn around. Um, and so, yeah, and like like we all know, like it's kind of like part of this race. Like sometimes you take a wrong turn, you have to turn around, you lose time. That was particularly frustrating though, because I still hadn't really slept at that point, aside from just like I took a nap in the sun on the Yitna at a particularly nice time, which was lovely, but it's also still not sleep. And so like I was just frustrated and wanting to get back to the trail. And I don't think I was really eating that time. So I like bonked at some point between there and getting to Shell Lake and was really struggling to getting into Shell Lake. But like eventually did, found those two cabins all full of people, but needed to make water. And so like made the uncomfortable decision of being that person who was like up and about, moving, getting things done while everyone else was trying to sleep, which you feel bad about, but also like that's what the cabins are there for. Um, and and I had hoped to like bivvy at some point, which is where I bivvied last year, and it was like a good spot to get good rest around Shell Lake. And that was my plan again this year, except for like that looming like wind forecast, which was like imminent at that point and starting to pick up that morning. And I had even like on my way out, I was like so tired and like started to like tromp off and find a bivvy spot. And then another racer came by, Gavin, and I was like, "Hey, what's the updated wind forecast?" He was like, "Well, should be starting around 9 a.m. this morning." And it was like maybe 6 a.m. at that point. And so I was like, "Okay, still can't sleep, got to keep going." So yeah, but and uh, yeah, so continued on. I think I remember last year the section between Shell Lake and the Finger Lake checkpoint being pretty straightforward,
Mhm.
but and I just made a plan to follow the same track I had last year, but
Mhm.
I didn't have the good intel that there was a much more direct route that could be taken. I guess there's been a road that's been put in the last year or so that a lot of people took. And so the route that what had been the traditional route is much longer than the route most people took. And so that was like a case where it would have been nice to actually follow people's tracks. Because like I saw people's tracks going on that road. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I just made a wrong turn following people's tracks. I'm not doing it again. So I'm just going to stick to my, GPS track, which I did and then like regretted. Um, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Should I stop at some point or any questions so far?
No, I do have a comment. I
Uh-huh.
do feel your pain back at Shell Lake. I had a similar experience 2 years ago where I was riding with a friend and he said, "Oh, and let's take the southern route. It's a shortcut. It's a lot better than taking the actual trail that goes all the way to the lake." And so I believed him, and this part starts out and it's just super climby.
Hmm.
And I was at a similar point. I was like at the end of my rope. Um, it was late. I was hungry. I was exhausted. There were moose print, like fresh moose prints that were like clearly. It was nighttime. It was dark, and the moose was like just out of sight. So we never saw the moose, but like it had to have been, just right down the trail. And there have been history of aggressive moose in this area before. Anyway, so finally I just said, you know what, that's it. Like I trusted you getting into this, situation, but like I need to take responsibility for what's happening. Like I'm not, because you kept saying like, "Oh no, we're almost there, just keep going." And I was like, no, I'm just not doing it. So I just like stopped
Yeah.
and slept. Like I bivvied like right up here. And then in the morning I, figured out where I was going and I was able to drop down to the lake and then I went into the cabins. So I feel your pain. It's super frustrating. It doesn't look like it's
Mhm.
that big of a detour, but I know that it is far
It's
and
far
hilly.
and it was treacherous to be on skis because whoever put that trail in, there was like so much debris from, I guess someone had brushed it out along the side, but left all that debris in the middle of the trail. So you can imagine like there are some steep downhills and you're going downhill and dodging all this debris because if you catch it with your skis, it'll just like throw you off. And so
Mhm.
like that was also like that was kind of a low point of the race. But
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, basically, like I got to Finger Lake Cabin after, like I was still kind of along the same pace as Scott and Meg. I was still seeing them a lot. And and me and Meg were a little bit together, like climbing out of Shell Lake area. But I lost her at some point. And but by the time they had taken the more direct route and had already left by the time I got to Finger Lake. And I got there. I spent more time than I should have there, and mostly because like it was empty. But when I was there, I was like, oh, this might actually be an opportunity to sleep at a checkpoint. There's no one else here, you know. So I like laid down, got comfortable, and then and then people started coming like as soon as I laid down. So it was like fruitless. But but yeah, I think it was really nice to talk to. I think Josh Brown was there, and he's done the 1,000 on ski. It was nice to chat with him about that. It's something I like to do at some point. And I did have some trouble with one of my boot pins that was getting stuck. And the volunteers there, Tony and one of the racers, Nate, helped me like get it unstuck because it happened a few more times. I was just the first of many times it happened. So it was nice to figure out what the problem was and how to like fix it when it happens again, that it's not like a but at the time, it was the first time it had happened. It was a new system. I was trying out these Explore Rotafella Explorer bindings, which are different than the N backcountry bindings I was using last year. So like I had used it all winter in Fairbanks, but this had was like a new thing that I hadn't experienced before, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? This, and I was mad at this binding. But it was good to like figure out like what the fix was, and it wasn't like a race changer.
Mhm.
Yeah. But like, okay, so leaving Finger Lake, that's when the wind was really starting to pick up. And so like I like succeeded in getting ahead of it before Finger Lake, which is great. But like I'm leaving there and it's super windy and I'm also really, really tired because I have not really slept still. And this is like longer than last year. Like I think last year I went 33 hours without sleeping. I don't know what it was this year. But it was longer.
Mm.
And so I'm like walking. I at this point I like it was so washboard and not good skiing. I was like, I'm gonna walk this section. So I'm walking along there and kind of hallucinating and seeing things in the trees. But it was so funny because there was like one spot that I passed and I thought I saw some people bivvying there. I was like, oh man, that's a great bivvy spot they have. It's really protected. And then I looked closer, I was like, there's no one there. I was like, that's my bivvy spot. So and so and so like that's where I slept and it was like that's like one of the high points because it was such a nice spot. Like it was easy to get to off the trail and behind these trees and really protected from the wind. I don't think there were like before that point and after, I didn't see a better spot to bivvy. And I think it was pretty cold that night. Like at the checkpoint, they said it would be getting down to -30. And I had basically the same setup. Like if you want to talk about like so last year, like bibbing was one of the things that I made a point of like wanting to improve on, like just the whole system. And I think I succeeded in that, like had a bigger pack and packed a few extra things because it would have been colder. One of those being a bivy sack, which I didn't end up using, but I thought might be handy if if shit really hit the fan.
Mhm.
But I still had like my -20 bag and then I like will wear layers and I've practiced bivvying in that like I bivvied in that quite a lot throughout the season and I think the coldest being -30 so I was pretty confident I could get sleep in a -20 bag with all my layers on and so like that was like a glorious night. I slept like 5 hours and woke up feeling rested and but then like quickly packed up and I think so like the decisions I made in like determining what I would like be using that day ended up being pretty crucial and I wish I'd made different decisions in that because like after like the next spot was going to be like Happy River area and I was expecting the cold weather to really hit on the other side of the pass like people were saying -30s and -40s and I wasn't really expecting sustained cold weather in that area, you know? So like I have really cold hands and pretty elaborate like glove systems. I bring multiple different types of gloves and different configurations and use them both and use them all with each other in different ways with hand warmers and stuff like that. And I chose like to put on to use these fur gloves with these Gore-Tex shells, which normally would have been fine in most situations, but I wish I had at that point put on, I also have ski pokies. And I don't know, like those are such that you're like I'm not gonna like stop in the middle of the trail and put pogies on. Like that's something I would do in a checkpoint, just because of like the time it takes and you want to do it right or else it's gonna bother you later on. And so like I wish that I had though, because that's like my warmest thing to keep my hands warm. But like going down like Happy River steps and stuff was like non-eventful. But at some point I was like up on the down on the Happy River and the wind was ripping and it was super cold. I don't know how cold it was, but I I overshot a little bit. Yeah, you could see there and wanted to
Mhm.
make sure I was on the right track. So I pulled out like my I was like navigating on my GPS and my hands were out of my gloves. And in that particular configuration, I don't have liner mitts on, you know, like I just have bare hands if they're going to be out. But like the wind ripped and it was so cold, like, and I could just feel my hands freezing at that point, you know, like, and I never felt anything that cold before. Like, and so like it was like, oh, I'm moving, you know, and I was like, this is the way, obviously. And so like I got back up
Mhm.
there and I don't think my hands really like I don't think I realized how cold they had gotten at that point. You know, I was just like, you know, you get cold and you want to keep moving to get your body temperature up. Like last thing you want to do is stop. So like I just kept moving. Um yeah, let's see. Yeah, and I think I didn't realize that my hands had really gotten frosted until like well on the way to Puntilla.
Mhm.
But yeah, like you can see, like I made a minor wrong turn there and like figured out that was another section where there's a super wide road next to the small trail that's the actual trail. And so it's like easy if you're not looking to like go off track, but at least I caught that pretty early.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. By the time I got to Puntilla and it was still daylight outside and like the skiing had improved and I was feeling pretty good. Um, but like I that was like the first chance to like check out my hands and like I saw that they like all of the tips were like a little like purple, you know? And and I thought, okay, this could be an issue. I cannot quite tell how bad this is. Some people will hear that and look at me strange, but like I think I'm no stranger to frostbite. Like I said, I have pretty cold hands and I've had frostbite a few times before. Like nothing to be proud of for sure, but like this is one of those things where I like have tried hard to like figure out a system for and then like once again encounter conditions that I, you know, wasn't quite prepared for, didn't make the right decisions for. Like I think I had the right gear, but wasn't using it at the time, you know, just because the cold came at a part in the race where I didn't plan it to. Um, but so like, you know, at this time, like my body feels great, but my hands were definitely frosted, especially my thumbs. And and I thought, like, you know, I've had like this isn't worse than any frostbite I've had before. And I'm pretty sure with these pokies I can keep them warm, you know. So I like made the decision to like go on to the next checkpoint at least because I like wasn't sure that this was a gonna end my race at that point. Um, so which is what I did. And uh yeah. Do you have should we any questions to interject before I go
Mm-mm.
on to like Roan?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, I
and
want to hear like about like what the conditions were like leaving Puntilla
uh-huh.
and like the pass and all that too.
Yeah. So like in the checkpoint in Pentilla, like I remember watching the tracker a couple years back when it was super windy and like just seeing all the racers like stacked up in Pentilla, and I was like, I hope it's not like that. And it wasn't. At least not at the point that I was there. There were still beds and plenty of space. But and people were kind of like chatting, trying to figure out their strategies for getting over the pass and the wind. And the information that people had was that, the worst day was Wednesday. At this point, this is like late Wednesday when I'm arriving at Pentilla. And so like the wind was supposed to be the worst Wednesday, and then dropping off in the morning time and then picking up potentially again. But like the pattern had been that it's lower in the morning and then higher as the day progresses. So like people were planning to leave early in the morning, and um and so like 2 a.m. was the time that like I set, and other people were also that had said that was the time they would go to. So I was like, okay, great. At least there'll be other people on the trail. Um, and also like 2 a.m. is a good time in my mind to leave, like thinking of how long it'll get through the pass and wanting to arrive at Rohn before it gets dark, just because of how hard it is to navigate that area and on the ice there. Um, so yeah, so I like laid around and like worked on my skis a bit and got some sleep at Puntilla, and like I felt like I was there way longer than I would have liked to have been. Like that's one of those situations where like this race puts me in like a really like just keep moving mentality, and it's really frustrating for me to like be sitting still. And but I also have to understand that like sometimes you have to sit still and let the bad conditions, go by before you go, because you're not doing yourself any favors otherwise. And so yeah, I was ready to go at 2, and it turns out like the other group of people that originally said they were going at 2 decided they needed more sleep and we're going to go at 4 or whatever. So I left by myself, but I was pretty confident that like there were other people out there, and like those other people were on bikes, and so like there was a chance that like it was likely that I would be seeing people in the past, or some people would pass me and vice versa. So I didn't feel like I was going out there alone, but I was like leaving Puntilla alone, and so like it started out fine, and like pretty calm, but then like the winds gradually picked up, and then eventually it was just like full on blast winds. And this was not even going over the pass, this was like approaching the pass, and there were some sections where it was just totally wind scour, there's no snow. And I should have, like any other conditions, I would have taken off my skis and walked on those points just to save my skis. But I didn't feel like I could stop at all, especially because I didn't want to take my hands out of my pogies,
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, my fingers can't freeze, my hands need to stay warm. You can't do anything right now, just keep going. And yeah, and so just like I have to say, like, I that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, like going through that wind full on and trying to navigate, and then climbing the pass, and it never ever let up. It was just windy the whole entire time, and it felt like it was getting colder and colder, the further that you went, which is kind of like what I was expecting, because like the forecast that called for the coldest stuff on the other side of the pass. Um, One thing that I was hopeful for, and I think I've kind of learned that like it's good to be hopeful, but it can also be like it can also like open the door to a lot of disappointment. But I was hopeful that like once you get over the pass, once I got over the pass, that the wind would calm down, and then at least I'd be able to like do some things. But like climbing the pass, getting up at the top, and then going over, and then feeling the wind, feeling that it was stronger on the other side, like there's no rest for the weary kind of thing. It
Mm-hmm.
was just like you had to keep going. um yeah, and then like eventually it did calm down, but it was still like windy the whole way throughout the gulch and on the river. And so it was, I think, one thing that I also picked up in Puntilla. Like I was definitely dehydrated when I first frosted my fingers, and I think that contributed to how bad and it was. And like as I was drinking more liquids in Puntilla, like and feeling like more circulation in my toes and my hands, it became obvious that dehydration was a major factor
Hmm.
in freezing them in the first place. So I tried especially hard to like drink water along the way, but it wasn't easy is also the point. And I think that's like one of the major takeaways from the race this year is like as prepared as you are and as good as your intentions are, like sometimes the conditions don't allow you to take care of yourself in the way that you would like to, you know? And it also makes me want to think about like different configurations of like for hydration and things like that to make it easier to access water in a way where I don't have to like expose my hands and that sort of thing. So it was just a really big learning experience the whole way. Um, yeah, and so like at Rohn, I got there and I think I like in retrospect, I think was probably a little bit delusional because I was still thinking I was going to continue on with my race, you know, but like after having skied that whole day in rough conditions with my hands in the condition that they were, I think like I think I was successful in not refreezing them, but like the trauma of like all of the polling and just the activity and motion really like wreaked havoc on that. Like they looked really bad. I think like the condition of the freezing was the same as it was prior, but like they had just been busted up, like, you know, like blisters and things like that. And people at the checkpoint looked at them and they were like, this doesn't look good. And our opinion is that you should not continue, you know. It did take me a while to like it took like multiple people saying like it would be stupid for you to continue. Like I understand like stupid. And so if people say you're not thinking right, then then that kind of gets to me and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not. And in retrospect, I was like, okay, I wasn't because like at that point, like I'm still doing things for myself. Like I am like able to pack my bag and able to, you know, do this. But maybe that's like part of some sort of like survival drive that people have. And but then as soon as I'm in the checkpoint and people are doing things for me, I realize how much it hurts to do it myself, you know?
Hmm.
Like, do I really want to be like packing my sleeping bag up? And it hurts this much. And when I'm asking people in the checkpoint to help me with it, like these should be things that you should be able to do on your own, you know? So yeah, it became clear at some point at that night that I should call it a race and um, yeah, and then figure things out and try and come back again later.
Hmm. Great. So at that point, so you went 188 miles,
Hmm.
which is still super, super far. Um, so didn't do the last like, what, third, a little bit more than third of the race. So you got like definitely more than halfway through. So yeah, that's great. And then you flew out from the Rowan checkpoint. I've always wondered what it would be like to be in a plane on that airstrip. I was talking to my dad last night and trying to explain to him that it's not an airport. I was like, just explaining like, no, it's snow, just a wide spot in the trees. Like there's no lights. Like it's not an airport that's paved. He was having a hard time fully understanding like the remoteness
Hmm.
of it and kind of the uniqueness of that type of a airstrip.
Yeah. Yeah, it was super cool and even like the takeoff and the flight path through the mountains were really close on either side. And yeah, it was just beautiful. I mean, I was distracted, I think. I think I didn't enjoy it as much as I should have because I
Hmm.
was
Right.
really in my head about like
Yeah.
having to quit this race.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really beautiful. And it ended up not being as expensive as it could have been because like I think I forget how expensive the flight is, but if it gets split between each person that's on it, and there were four
Hmm.
people that
Hmm.
dropped the same day, so we could all split it and it was affordable.
Hmm. Good. Well, that helps.
Yeah.
Jessica, did you have a question you'd like to ask?
Yeah, do we wanna scroll down here? You kind of touched on a lot of I had watched your last year's interview and came up with some questions, and you touched on a lot of them during your thing. So, um, for preparation, what did you learn from last year's race that you used to help prepare for you in this year's race?
Yeah, I think I was like I did get a bigger pack, and that made a huge difference. I um, I also like last year because I had a super small pack, I was really like it was a really tight. I like Kindle and Finger Lake made an observation. She said you have a really tight kit, and I was like I feel like it could be tighter, because like there's something about like you don't want, even though my pack was larger and it was easier to fit things in, like I didn't want it to be tall because like having that weight above your head can throw you off your stride for skiing, So I still always wanted to have it packed down pretty good, and so like maintaining a tight kit, I guess was as they call it, was a consistent thing that I did, but also it was easier to do that having a larger pack. And I did eat better and like pack foods better, like thinking of what I was eating last year at different points along the race. And I did comment, like I was still looking forward to things that I had in my drop bags. So like I knew I did a good job because I was still like looking forward to certain things. Um, yeah, and I even packed more, let's see, like I've been training and using like muck tuck a lot for a race, which is super high calorie. It's like whale blubber, and I luckily have access to that through friends, and through friends, and um, and I think that's pretty clutch because like at some point there's like this calorie depletion that sets in and it makes you colder, but I mean, I can't say I wasn't cold, but like the like draining tired cold that I felt last time, I might credit the like having that calorie dense foods for helping to like hold that off.
Yeah, and that's impressive that you still had the the desire to eat the food you packed. Because I know,
Yeah.
especially like at these temperatures, there's only a certain like amount of foods that actually withstand these cold temps. So the like variety is limited. So to be able to find something that you want to continue eating day after day, that's
Mm,
impressive.
yeah.
What is something that you are most proud of on that you did on the trail, and what's something that you're going to remember the most?
I think definitely going over the pass, like that was hard, and a lot of people didn't make it over the pass for various reasons, and so I'm proud that I got through that. Um, I do wish that I didn't, one thing I wish I'd packed but didn't were goggles. And because like all I had were sunglasses going through that wind. I don't know if you can see how clear my camera is, but I had quite a lot of wind burn, like around my eyes. Like I was mostly covered, but, um, but caught a lot of wind in my face and couldn't see for a lot of that and
Mm.
wish I had brought goggles. Um, but yeah, let's see, things that, yeah, so I think that's both the thing I'm most proud of having like accomplished going over that and that I will remember the most because it was quite a learning experience and also just because of like the challenge that it was.
One thing that I was wondering about your how you protected your face when you were going up and over the pass because you talked about how hard it was to drink. And I feel
Mhm.
like that's the big challenge. I mean, eating and drinking is the big challenge because like you have your mittens on, you don't want to get your hands cold. You don't want to take, if you have a mask or, buff or,
Mhm.
something on your face, you don't want to take that off, because you have to stop and drink. So I was just wondering, other than goggles, like, I mean, or sunglasses, like how did you keep your face protected? Because, one thing that I don't know if people who are watching this realize is like just the wind chill. Like when you were leaving the pass, like the wind chill would have been like what, 30 below, 40 below. with a wind of what, 40 miles an hour or something, like really, really, really wild wind. So like you take the wind chill of that, and then to like just kind of like, to add insult to injury, the like biggest challenge is it's like straight at your face because it's coming like right down the valley in this huge mountain pass. And so it's not like you can like just take a hood and kind of like shield your face from it and protect yourself, but it's like right at you. So it's just like you're just so exposed. So it can be a huge challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have a nice full rough, and that was helpful. But like you said, it's hard to keep it around your face when the wind is going straight at you. So it was getting blown back, but I do think it helped quite a bit. I mean, that's also something I learned from last year. I had a very light rough last year that was like thinner in width that I thought would be ideal because it's lighter weight, for this kind of like fast, light trip that we were doing. But it's also not effective in extreme conditions like a more full rough is. I was happy to have something that was fuller. And like I had a nice warm hat with it covered my ears and had a bib. Apocalypse Design makes them their, I think it's called like their adventurer hat or musher hat or something like that. But and then also like I had two buffs and the I've been using like it's important to like keep your face covered and get warm air, otherwise you damage your lungs. I've been using these like Naru face masks, which is just like a buff that has a little like skeleton cage in the inside of it that that holds it off of your face, so you don't have like that frozen ice on your face. But then it's nice to put another buff over that. And that worked. That's great for like coverage, but then the challenge of eating with something like that, it's not conducive to eating because you have to end up pulling it down or up to get food in your mouth. So I talked to some people who have like systems when they've integrated these feed holes in their system so they don't have to take off their face covering, which sounds great. I would like to know more about that. But yeah, so like that was a challenge is eating and then reconfiguring and making sure things, because also after a while things don't stay put and they get misshapen. And so yeah. But I mean, I think my system this year was better than last year. And like most of my face ended up fine. It's just like this one like raccoon band that of windburn that I had.
Yeah. So if you could look back to the starting line of the race, so like thinking back, like that was, surprising. It was only 2 weeks ago, that you started. If you could give your past self one piece of advice or say one thing, what would it be?
Oh, I don't know. I think I tell myself about to take that road towards Finger Lake instead of taking the long trail, and I also might tell myself to like be conservative with hand warmth instead of like, you know, I think like those pogies are the warmest thing for hands, but they're also really cumbersome and hard to maneuver things with. And so I'm always reluctant to use them. And unless it's like super, super cold. And so I think if I had taken a more conservative approach to, warming and stuff, that it would have been, yeah, a better outcome.
Right.
What is next for you? What are you looking forward in the spring and summer? And do you think you'll be back next year?
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to like, I guess it's always like a nice transition from ski season to trail running season because I love them both. And so like by the time season's over, I'm looking forward to getting out on the trails and running again. So that's what I'm most looking forward to. And there's always like new areas and new trails to explore. And like Alaska, it's a huge place. And yeah, and I've only explored like a small portion of it. So I'm always looking out for new things to do and gardening also and going fishing and all that fun summertime stuff. And and yeah, I'll definitely do it again. And and maybe even next year. I think it's such a quick decision you have to make. You have to register by April, and it doesn't really give you time to I'd like to think about like, how are my hands doing and this and that. But yeah, we'll see. I may just register. Like I would like to do it again. I have this tunnel vision for things like this where like you know, you don't succeed at something and you know what to do to change it. And so like you want to apply that like immediately. Like I would just like to get back and do it again the right way. So I'm likely to register again for next year.
Mm-hmm. You can go after that record again and see if you can take a little bit more off, possibly, if that's
I don't know,
possible.
I guess.
Yeah.
I would never have that as a goal. It's
No.
more, yeah, it's more like doing the best in the conditions that there are. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Well, those are most of the questions that we have pulled together. I was just wondering, you had mentioned earlier Endurance North. Was wondering if you want to talk about that or anything else, or if there's anyone to thank.
Yeah. So like I'm the current acting president of Endurance North, is a nonprofit based in Fairbanks, and committed to like expanding access to outdoor activities, and in particular ultra distance racing and multi-sport racing. And so like, yeah, we put on the White Mountains 100, Tanana River Challenge, and Chena River to Ridge every year, and also are supporting trails and events in the community. And yeah, and so check out our races. And yeah, and then also this year my race was supported by Tununrmiut Rinit Corp, which is the Alaska Native Corporation of the village of Tununrmiut, which is about 100 located 110 miles west of Bethel. And yeah, and TRC Corp for short, they manage their traditional lands in accordance with traditional values of sustainability, respect, and sharing of bounty. And I think like all of us in this like endurance racing community, like we all spend so much time outdoors and have like cultivated like such an appreciation for our land and the environment, and conservation and stewardship is something that like a lot of us value. And so I think like their support of my race has been just a reminder um, of like, like endurance racing is such like an individual sport, and people talk about like the individual struggle and the challenge. And it's just an opportunity to like to think more broadly about like the context of the race and where we're racing and what it's about, and like the traditional stewards, the original stewards of the lands that we're racing on, and the original and the continued stewards of the lands that we're racing on. And so, yeah, it's just a message for us all to keep that in mind.
Yeah, great. Well, that's a wonderful note to end on.
Yeah, thanks.
So really appreciate that. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share your experiences and stories and advice with us and all the listeners. So hope you have a good rest of your recovery and can get out and do those spring activities soon and it warms up. So great.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.